Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll Masechtas Gittin daf Chaf Tes. We are going to begin on the bottom of Chaf Ches Amud Beis, the very last line, Ikad Amri. So we were learning in yesterday's daf a Mishnah that said that if a person is going out to be killed, being sentenced to death, so we take upon ourselves the Chomrei Chayim and the Chomrei Mason. We go l'chumra in all circumstances. Now, on this, the Gemara said that the only time maybe that we're actually going to even assume that the guy is alive is dafka when it comes to Beis Din Shel Yisrael, because they will potentially overturn a verdict even after the Gemar Din. However, when it comes to the courts of Ovikachavim, once there's a Gemar Din, that's it, and therefore he's already considered to be like a dead man walking. And then we discussed a little bit about this. So Ikad Amri Rabbi Yosef, the other way around. Lo shano el bebeis din shel Ovikachavim. Maybe the only time we say this, that we make this distinction, says Rashi, the noisel of chumrei chayim, that we'll even consider that maybe the guy's still alive, is ela bedini Ovikachavim, the shakli shoichata, because even though the person is supposed to be sentenced to death, they may take bribes, and therefore this person really may live. As we continue to Chaf Tes Amud Aleph, once he's being sentenced to death, that's it. We know that the Torah explicitly says more than once of not taking shaychad, not taking a bribe. So therefore, we're going to say that he's going to be sentenced to death. Beis Din Shel Yisrael, nam yesher de zachule zachusa. So why are we going to say for sure that this person is going to be sentenced to death? We know that they could overturn the verdict. So ki zachule zachusa mikmei delig mardina. Typically, it only happens after Gemar, before Gemar Din. Bas Gemar Dina suloi chazale. However, afterwards, it's over. There's no way anything's going to happen. We spend so much time to investigate. Now, it doesn't mean that we would not, if more information would come, because we saw before, Rashi quoted the Gemara that said in Masechtas Sanhedrin, Hasus Ratz Umamidoi, that even a horse can go and gallop to get to the place where it's going to be executed, and they'll stop the execution if there's reason to. Rashi says here, lo shchiach. It's not a very common thing that would happen. Hilkach lo mesabkinan lohachi. So we're not going to rely on that so much because it's a milslo shchicha that we're going to say, we're not sure. So lema mesayle. Let's say the following is a proof. Kol makam shamdu shnayim. Anytime you have two people that stand up, we saw this in yesterday's daf, that we testify that this person was sent, there was a verdict against him, and here was witnesses. He's going to be killed. So we see this as proof that in a Jewish court he is killed, and there's no doubt, and there's no schus. So the Gemara says no dilma borech shani. Maybe it's only in the situation because he ran away. Tashma, Shama Beis Din Shel Yisrael Shahay Oimrim. You ever heard from a Beis Din, a Jewish court, that they said the following: Ish Ploni Meis, that this guy died, or Ish Ploni Nerag. Yes, Ishto. So based on that, this man's wife can be married. Miku Mant Risin Shel Ovikachavim, which we quoted. Rashi says Mamunim Lahareg, the executioner of the Ovikachavim, said, Ish ploini meis, ish ploini nerag, al yesu es ishtoi. In that situation, we don't rely on them. So my meis, so my nerag. What does it mean? Ilu meis, mamish neverg mamish, that he's actually dead. The kavasi gabi avikachavim, amai al yesu es ishto, hakai malon, kol mesiach afitumo, hemune mehimnele. We should believe this executioner, even though he's avikachavim, but he's being mesiach afitumo. He's not doing it as aidus, he's just in happenstance conversation speaking this way, so we always would rely on that. Elav, what must it be? Meis means yotzi lomos. Benerag yotzi harig, that he's not dead yet, but he's about to be executed. So we see, again, proof that when it comes to based in Israel, he's considered like he's dead. Really, he's talking about he's dead. So Milo, why don't we listen to the executioner? After all, we should believe him. That's regarding things he has no shaykhs to. Because he's involved, he's the executioner. So in that situation, he may lie. And Rashi on the previous daf said, to say he was killed. So he has shaykhs and connections to this whole thing. So because it's his profession, so he may lie, basically. We can't trust him. So maybe that's the reason. Okay. All right, let's look at question 3, which we may have done yesterday. Ha'idul of shenigbar dino lehareg ha'imasianis ishto al pi'edus zu. So l'chad man de oimer gemar bebesin shel ein masian, besin shel akum masian. L'chad man de oimer ivcha. So this was the Ikad de Amri. So yesterday we saw Pumfakert. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. Masnisen. Hamevi get be'eretz Yisrael. So let's say this shliach brings a get from Eretz Yisrael, and the reason why we specify that, Rashi says, Shein sarach lo mefane nechtam v'nechtam. I don't know why it has to say it that way. It doesn't say mefane nechtam v'fane nechtam. I'm not sure why Rashi writes it that way. But regardless, we know that if you're in Eretz Yisrael, one of the first things that we learned in this Masechta, you don't have to say mefane nechtam, they're bekim. Okay. Sheres mitzuyos. Now, because there's no need, let's say b'chol. Let's say the shliach gets sick, and it's hard for him to continue on in his shlichus. So he could give the get to another shliach. A shliach can appoint another shliach. In fact, when we give a gittin and we appoint shlichus, one of the decorations that we have the person echo is not only can you make a shliach, but you also allow a shliach to make another shliach. So we see that is something in which is allowed to be done. And that's okay, and it doesn't have to be done in Beis Din. Now, v'im amrlo, but let's say, for example, the husband specifies and says, "Toili himenu chayfetz ploini." I want you to take for me a particular object. Says Rashi, "Kishititen loss a get." When you give the get, lo yishalchenu biyad acher. So in that situation, he doesn't want it given to anyone else. Lo yishalchenu biyad acher she'in ritzayni shehei pigdaynu biyad acher, because he doesn't trust anyone else. He's trusting you, the shliach. So even though it's true, and we have to discuss this at greater length in the Gemara, that I appointed you to bring the get, and normally a shliach could appoint another shliach, but if in addition to that the husband wants him to have a chayfetz, to take a chayfetz, that no longer he doesn't want in the hands of someone else. Says the Gemara, Amrav Kahana, Chol Tanan. Our Mishnah says, Dafka if he's sick, says Rashi, the honest. In other words, if he just says, I don't feel like doing this, I changed my mind, I'm just going to get another shliach, that he's not allowed to do. So it's obvious. The Mishnah says, why does that say the case of chayil? It's probably dafka. Maybe if he was also not sick, this is the normal way. That the only reason why would he stop? It must be because he has a legitimate reason not to do it. So, Kamash Muan, Dafka. So, Hechidami, what exactly is the case? If the husband said, Hoylich, just go only, he doesn't specify that you have to do it. So, Nafka of the Loicholanami, we should say that even if he wasn't sick, we should also say he's allowed to appoint someone else. As Rashi, V'lo Emerle Ata, Ba'atzmacha Hoylich. So, he wasn't really so particular. On the other hand, says the Gemara, it says, I want you to do it, so I feel cholanamilo. The fact that he was specific, it shouldn't even matter if he's sick, he should still not be able to appoint another shliach. So that's mamarashach. How do we understand this? Now, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, and if you want to say it's like the shita of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, but he holds, I feel cholanamilo. As we're going to see, that even if you're sick, a shliach cannot appoint another shliach. The Sanya. Hoylich get zel ishti, give this get to my wife. Harazem mishalch b'yad acher, you can choose someone else. At hoylich get zel ishti, you do it. Harizel lo yishalchenu biyad acher. You cannot. So it says beferish, the Tanakama is mechalik between if he just says hoylech or hoylechat. However, Shemig Gamaliel Eimer bein kach avein kach in hashliach as shliach. So certainly according to him, you can't appoint another shliach. So Imoy say hoylech v'huda choyl. So maybe all he did was say hoylech, but nonetheless, we're going to say the only time you're allowed to do it is dafka in a situation where he's sick. Says Rashi, Imoy say mastis in the armali hoylech. The reason why he's allowed to do it is because there's a chayla. So it has to be both. So maybe you can say that we say he actually said chayla at hoylech, you go. However, since the guy is sick, he makes an exception over there. It says Rashi, mastis and diarmalei ad hoylech. When it comes to someone sick, so we make an exception and say, okay, fine, you can get another shliach. What am I supposed to do? You're sick. The boy say, a third answer, Rabbi Shimon Gamaliel, the chol shani. Again, you can say that even though he holds a shliach, cannot make a shliach, but maybe if a guy is sick, we make that exception. Tanan. Now maybe get Eretz Yisrael, the chol, so it said in our Mishnah. If a person is a shliach, bringing a get from Eretz Yisrael, he's sick, you can give it to someone else. So a shliach can make another shliach. Or minhu for the Gemara, if you said to two people, Tenu get ishti, give this get to my wife, says Rashi, v'lo nasan lahem get, he doesn't give them the get, asan edim, they become witnesses. V'alvo pi shloi armelahem atem atzmechem kasvuhu, even though he didn't say you yourselves write it, hari elu yichtavu v'yitnu, they write it and give it. Can come on, because you don't say to a cipher to write. Okay, let's continue the Gemara. So Amul Shnaim Tenu get lishti, give this get to my wife. Oh Shleisha, you say to three people. This is the other part. Kisvu get, write the get. Utenu ishti, and give it to my wife. So Hari Elu Yichtav Yitnu, so they can write it and give it. Inhu in Avol Shliach Lo, only they can do it, but not a shliach. So l'chayra, we see that ein yachid ois a shliach, he cannot make a shliach. So Rabbi hasam time of mine mishum bezayin the baal. Hacha baal will kapid. So the whole reason why regarding the writing is a problem, that he cannot have someone else do it, because he doesn't want others to know that he can't write a get. So no one else could do it. That's why he's not allowing anyone else to do it. Or people will find out maybe that he's illiterate, and therefore it's a bizayon to him, and it's his job to write the get, and that's the reason why he's embarrassed. However, here, that's when it comes to writing it. But over here, he's not makbid. Says, Hacha gabi holacha lo kapid demaikapedika. Okay. Rava Oimer Mishum Demili Ninhu. They're just words. Umili lo mimsran lo shliach. And words cannot be given over to a shliach. Says Rashi. Hasam hainu taima de lo yishav shliach. The reason why he can't point a shliach shlo masol lehem ela devarim. He only gave them words. Then b'devarim koyach liyos chayzum nimsarim la'acher. So his words aren't enough to be able to give those words to someone else. However, the shliach who has physically the get in his hands, so therefore he can give the get to someone else. So if it's talking about something in which he didn't give him anything, so then in that situation they can't transfer those words onto another person. Mashen Kain, if it was an actual get which has mamoshus, so then they can. So my binayu. So what's the difference between these two tirutzim? Shliach matana. When it comes to the sending a matana, says Rashi, she'amar bal habayis lebeiz edim. You say to two witnesses, kisvu shtar matana lepoini. Write this shtar matana to Pliny. E-time of the get mishum bezayon. If the whole issue is bezayon, hachol leiko lememro hachish shar eno level kaisvoi. Because when it comes, it's only bezayin because when it comes to the get, because the husband has to write the get, he doesn't want people to know he's illiterate. However, it's not his job to write a shtar matana. Rather, the makabel is the one who writes that, and therefore there's no bezayon, and therefore, according to that reason, maybe they would be able to appoint a shliach. Rav Oimer matana, fine. Uba put the Rabbi Shmuel. Rav Oimer matana enu kiget, Shmuel Oimer matana hari kiget, which is exactly this machlokas, whether or not a matana has the same din as a get, which we'll look at question 4. Rabbi Amar matanenu can get, Shmuel can get. Indian ma pligi din hamatana can get, umehem study hamachlokas. So they argue whether or not a shliach can make another shliach. And the machlokas is regarding a get, the einos a shliach. Why can you not make a shliach, cannot make another shliach? Is it because of bizayon debal? Maybe it's because it's an embarrassment to the husband, regarding the writing of the get. So who matana inu can get? So when it comes to a matana, it's not like a get because he doesn't have to write the get. Omishomili will mimsul shliachu v'huadin matana. Or it has to do with words, and therefore, just like they're holding on to the document, so too of the get, he's also holding on to the shtar matana. So therefore, that would be the same machlokas between the two. It says Rashi Mandi Amr Mili lo mimserin gabi hachinami lo mimserin. Okay. Omer Reish Lakish. Kan Shana Rabbi. Here Rabbi learned this Mishnah that we're learning is from Rabbi. Ein hashoyel rashoyel hashil. A borrower is not allowed to basically lend out. Says Rashi, Dehadit nan lo yeshalchenu biyad acher lo mishum bituli shlichus the gita nakat. The reason has nothing to do with that you're getting rid of your shlichus. De'im shliach biyad acher haget get. Because in fact, if you would give a shliach would give a get to another shliach, it would still be good. Even though, as we said, the guy may not want the object given over to another person, nonetheless, shliach legarish miyashavya, it's still considered to be a divorce. Now, when it says don't send it to another shliach, it just means that a borrower is not allowed to lend out, and a renter is not allowed to lend. That's all it means. So if you borrow, it's kind of like a shliach to a shliach. No. It's what we're talking about over here is actually the whole notion of a borrower. If you borrow something, you can't lend it out to someone else. So everyone knows that you can't do that. It says Rashi, I lent it to you specifically. I didn't want you to lend it out to anyone else. The Nim says so obviously that's not allowed. Ella zimnin de Gittin namiloi havi the nasa kami sharmulo al tigarsha elo bebias begirsha ba'aliyah al tigarsha elo biyomim el biyomin begirsha b'smoil. So in other words, maybe this guy is very specific, says Rashi. Mishum shlichus to get gufa. Tana, lo yishalchenu, don't send it in the hand of another shliach. Maybe it's not even a get. Not only, he shouldn't, I didn't want the object in the other person's hands because I don't trust them. Maybe it's an issue by the get as well. He says, don't divorce except with your right hand. You use the left hand. Maybe there's a link between the object that he's dealing with and the get, and therefore maybe the guy would be makbid. So let's read this again. And maybe it's k'il, like he says, don't divorce me except on the bottom floor, and instead he divorced her on the upper floor. Don't divorce her except with your right hand. He uses the left hand. So this could have been a specific connection. It said that I only want this get to be chal if you're the one that deals with this object. But if you give it to another person, then not, because they were like connected to another. The kul yalma. Now everyone says, heicha de nafkala pei, when the woman goes out to see the shliach, v'yoyev lechefetz, and gives to her the object, v'hadur shakla minei gita, and then takes it from her, it's a get. In that case, kul yam lo pligi. Ki pligi de gita mal yahavi. We're talking about where it's a good get. In that situation, so let's read this again. Okay. The Kuliyama Heicha Nafka but La'ape. Woman goes out to see him. The Yoivli Chayfetz and gives the Chayfetz Vahadar Shaklomine Gita and then takes the get. Kuliyama Lapli the Gita Maliyavi. It's certainly going to be a good get, says Rashi. The Afangab the inward sin shaping Dainabiadacher. Even though the husband can say, I didn't want this object in anyone else's hands, I chose you, the Shliach, and not another Shliach. Shlichus the Gita will bottle. Nonetheless, the Shlichus of the get's not going to be bottle. Kichol Shluchi Gita Shecholim Laser Shliach. The get will kapid bal what davar is that. The get ain't totally bechayfetz. Says no, the one has nothing to do with another, and therefore it's going to certainly be a good get. Ki pligi heichad yermalei, as we continue to Chav Testament base. Maybe they only argue in a situation where shekol mina chayfetz, where they took the chayfetz v'hader hayvul gita and then gave the get v'ozul ihu, and then he comes v'yoyvul gita v'hader shakol mina chayfetz. Then he takes the object afterwards. Rabbi Yochanan poisel ba v'koshkein b'shluchai, v'shlokish machshe b'shlucha v'koshkein boy. So because basically what happened was he didn't do it in accordance to the way that he was told to do it, so therefore maybe that is enough of a reason to say it's not going to even be a good get. Okay. Let's see if we have a question over here. Not that one. Okay. Weiter. Let's see the next Mishnah. Mastisen. Hamevi get mimedina siyam. So over here it's different because you would have to say b'fan and nechtam. V'chol when you're sick. So asa shliach bebeistin. So what you can do is you can go to the beis-din, u'mishalchai, and now they will appoint a new shliach. V'oymer lifneihem b'fan and nechtam. So you, because you're sick, you'll go to the beis-din, and you'll testify and you'll say b'fan and nechtam there. However, in shliach acharon, the second guy who's now was appointed through the beis-din does not sarach she'amer b'fan and nechtam, doesn't have to say anything because especially wasn't true. El oimer shliach beis-dinani. All he used to do is say that I was appointed from beis-din. Says Rashi, Mistama beis-din also hadavar bech sheiroi. And obviously, if he's mentioning a beis-din, we could assume that they know what they're doing in appointing him as a shliach, and therefore it's acceptable. Says the Gemara, Amru le Rabbanan la'avimi b'rei d'Ravavoi. So he said the following. Ba minei Rabbi Avoy asked a question. Shliach to shliach, says Rashi, hashliach hasheni shenas bebeis-din. Regarding the second shliach who was appointed by beis-din, mishavi shliach alo, can he make a third shliach? So shliach number one was sick. He went to a beis-din. Beis-din makes a shliach. Can that shliach make a shliach? Sermalahu halo tiboiluhu. This is not a question. It says the last one. Now, why does it mention the last one? It should just say the second one. It must be there's more than two potential shluchim. Must be there could be. He could even make a third shliach. The whole question is that when shliach number two, who is appointed in beis-din, makes a third person to a shliach, which is allowed, but beis-din or feel shlo beis-din, is it necessary that the third one has to be in front of a beis-din, just as the second one was? So amrulei halo miboilon, that also is not a question, because meitani el oimer shliach beis-dinani. That's what you're supposed to say. So apparently, everyone needs to do this in beis-din, because that's the statement you have to say, which obviously you can only say if you're appointed in beis-din. Not only the second one, but also the third. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Masni Hachi. He asked a question. Does it have to be done in beis-din? Why don't you just ask in general? Can shliach number two make a shliach number three? Similarly, no, he said I have to ask you that. Why did none? In a shliach acharon, the fact that it says acharon, that again, it's a raya. There must have been more than two. Eloki miboilon bebasin shul bebasin. I'm wondering about that. So that shouldn't be in the question either. Also, the Gatani el oimer shliach based anani. So the fact that you said that obviously means that every shliach afterwards has to say the same thing, which means they had to have been appointed in a based. Omer Rabba shliach be'eretz Yisrael oisa kamish shluchim. A shliach in Eretz Yisrael can make many shluchim. So he can make a shliach even outside of Beis Din, since he doesn't say b'fanei. That's the point. So Amar Rav Ashi imeis rishon. If let's say the first guy dies, says Rashi, ad shelo hagia haget liyada, before the get reaches the woman, batul kulon, that all of the shluchim become batul because they're all linked to the original shliach. Amar Rav Ashi ha da'aba, that which was said by Abba, Dikatnusahi. It was actually in his younger years. Says Rashi, Bikatnuso Aimer, Avi Shemua Zu Shieshul Hashavaleha. Ilu Mace Bal Midi, if the husband dies, Midi Meshasha Ispahu, there's no substance. Skul Mekayach Man Kaasu, Mekayach the Baal Kaasu. They're actually all coming from the husband. Isa Labal, Isnahulakulu. As long as the husband's alive, then all the shluchim are fine. The other shluchim aren't coming from the first shliach, but they're coming from the husband. Leis labal, leis lakuhu. So it's not true. It's not that you need the first shliach to be around. He said that when he was young. Really, the shliach is connected to the husband. So it's all totally on the husband still being alive. Of course, if the husband's not alive, it wouldn't be a get anyway. Hahu gavra deshadale gita the base. So that we have a story of a person who sent a get to divorce his wife. Amar shliach, he said, I have a problem. I don't know. I'm not going to recognize her. You want me to give this woman a get? I don't know who she is. So he said, Zil Yahavi la'abamar min Yomi. So instead, you should give it to this rabbi, Di'ihu Yadala, because he knows her. He knows what she looks like. The lazel and go. The lace v'nihile, and basically go over there and take care of it that way. Asavu ashkach la'abamar min Yomi. The problem was this poor shliach, he didn't know who the woman was, and he also couldn't find this rabbi who apparently does know. So Ashkahil Rabbi Avoi. Instead, he came across Rabbi Avo, Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa, Rabbi Yitzchak Navcha. The Yosef Rav Safra, Gabai, Rav Safra was sitting there. Our Malay, he said, Maser Milach Kamei Didan. Give over your words to us, says Rashi. Emor Divrei Shlichuchta. Give over your shlichus to us. V'tein lanu a get, and you'll give us a get. V'yamr b'fanei say that. V'anu nimserenu, we'll give it to her. Yishliach based in. So it's fine because we'll be the shliach based in. We'll take care of it for you. The chiyesi abba bar min yomi nisvinale. And when it turns out that when we come across Abba Bar Min Yomi, who you don't know who he is or you couldn't find him, once he comes, we'll give it to him. V'leizel, when it comes, so basically, I understand you don't know where this guy is, so you don't have to worry and stick around and wait to try to find him. Give it to us, we're based in, and then when he comes across, then we'll give him the get to give to her. So Amruhu Rav Safra, so Rav Safra said 1 second. This is a shliach that was not given over for garrison, says Rashi. This guy was not supposed to. The shliach was not the one who was doing the divorce. He wasn't supposed to give it to her. He was supposed to give it to some rabbi. He's not really in the place. We're not in the place to be able to give it to someone else. So it's a problematic situation here. So Ichsufu, he actually was embarrassed because he realized that perhaps he should not have suggested this. Amarava kapchinhu Rav Safra. We should cut off the legs of Rav Safra with Tlasar Rabbanan Smuche. These 3 rabbis relied on him. It says Rashi, cut the ragleim shlo yimsu raglaim l'divrehim. Just means that his he didn't have a leg to stand on. Amar Rav Ashi b'mai kapchinhu. Why do you have to be so forceful and to say such a thing? Says Rashi, halo enu teshuva dami. He didn't say, I want you to give this to him, this rabbi to do it, not you. Originally, he wanted the shliach to give his wife the get. It was just the guy said, I'm sorry, I don't know who she is. I don't know what she looks like. If he did know who she looked like, who she was, he would have been able to give the get. So maybe it was okay to have given it over to the shliach. So Rav Ashi, b'mai kabchinhu mi karmelei abu bar min yomi v'lo at. He didn't say, and not you. He wasn't excluding you. So therefore, maybe it should work. Yigidiyami, Amarava, Kabchinhu Rav Safra Latlas Rabbanan Smuchi Beteusa. That they made a mistake. Amaravashi, my Teusa. What was the mistake? My Ka'imrele. What did the husband say? Arba bar min yomi v'lo at. He didn't say that. And therefore, apparently, someone else, he would be able to give it to the shluchim to give it to him afterwards. Question 5. Shliach haget kishaisa shliach sheni, a shliach haget who makes another shliach v'sheni kishaisa shlishi himsach minui bebeistin. That's a pretty straightforward question. It's not so simple. Hamevi get be'eretz Yisrael asa kama shluchim means shalol bebeistin. Because you don't have to say Vanan Echtam, it doesn't even have to be in Beis Din if you're in Eretz Yisrael. However, if you're in Medina Sayyam, so then always has to be done in Beis Din. Okay, let's look at question TA 27. Kishashliach she'im hasheni hu mekayach harishon mekayach habal u'ma nafkamina b'zeh. So we just had this. So it says it's a machlokus, which, based on what we just said, and the nafkamina is what happens if the husband dies. If the husband dies, fine, but what if the first shliach dies? That's why we said over here that it's not totally on the shliach, but rather it's totally on the husband. That's the reason why we said that man ka'asu mekayach lebal ka'asu isni de lebal isni lekuhu leis lebal leis lekuhu. So again, even though it's a machlokas, TA 27, but again, that's how we would emphasize that. Question TB 28. Shliach get kishasa shliach sheni v'sheni kishasa shlishi himsach minoi bebeistin, which is exactly question 5. This is TB 28. Let's see what I wrote. Im omer shehu shliach beistin oz l'fiachad meshitas. Okay, it's not correct, right? So the difference is in Eretz Yisrael, afil shalo bebeistin, because you don't have to say upon the nektav. However, bebavel, right, or Medina Sayyam, I should say, Medina Sayyam. So the din is davka bebeistin. Okay, Adka.